Hi there, I'm Leah Smart, and as Jill mentioned, I am a Senior Customer Success Manager at LinkedIn. And I'm here to talk with you today about coaching and how to have powerful conversations with your team, both in a general context and the context of diversity recruiting. Many of these concepts were first coined by the Coaches Training Institute, which is the world's largest coaches training program, and continue to be used in relationships around the world. Now, you might be wondering how coaching relates to diversity strategy. Coaching skills enable people to interact in a way that's supportive to both parties, connecting at a truly human level. And what person wouldn't want that type of interaction at their company? Coaching conversations and skills are a way for you to engage each member of your team in real conversations in which they feel seen, heard, appreciated, empowered, and ultimately accepted. And as called out in LinkedIn's 2019 Global Talent Trends, soft skills are one of the top things employees and employers are looking for. Think about how a culture of coaching through compassionate leadership could positively affect not only how you recruit diverse talent, but how your company retains every talented employee, including those you and your team are working so hard and focusing energy on to proactively engage. Let's start with defining the coach. When are you being a coach versus playing other roles? Today, the term coach is frequently used for many types of relationships and conversations. What I aim to do is offer a new way to start looking at your conversations from the lens of what type of support you're offering. What words come to mind for you when you think about coaching conversations today with your direct reports, peers, or others in your life? What's your mindset when you enter a conversation with someone based on the structure of your relationship, and how does that guide the type of interaction that you're offering? Let's first take a look at the types of informal and supportive relationships that exist today between many professionals. And remember, while each of these has incredible value, it's important for us to draw a distinction in how we're showing up. First and foremost, there's the mentor. The mentor is a person giving their time to someone who is typically less experienced than they are in a particular area, with the goal of imparting their knowledge to help the mentee benefit from things like knowing what to expect ahead of time, blind spots, mistakes, taking calculated risks, and ultimately being successful. Mentors usually are not directly responsible for the performance of the person they're working with, and in this way they can act as a neutral third party to the circumstance of the mentee. Second, there's the role of the manager, someone who is directly responsible for the performance of their direct report. This person guides their team through their day-to-day work, giving advice, feedback, and ultimately impacts whether or not their direct report is thriving, surviving, or in need of a change. I'm sure many of you have played both of these roles at some point. When you consider the type of support and response you provide in the role of a mentor or a manager, it's likely that some of the words that align with these look like this: advice, direction, opinions, telling, storytelling, talking, problem solving, and deciding. Now, what I'd love to do is dig into the option of coaching. And this is really a way to support individuals on your team or any people you're in relationship with. True coaching relationships or conversations can occur in a number of circumstances, including but not limited to when someone is facing a challenge or opportunity, when they're stuck or they're unclear how to move forward, or if they need to spend time processing a situation or an experience. Many of us innately move to problem solving, advice giving, or action planning when we're approached with these scenarios. A coach sees things a little bit differently. So just for today, I'd like you to imagine putting on your coaching hat in scenarios that you come up against. To clarify the distinction, let's first take a look at some of the beliefs that a coach holds. First and foremost, the person that you are coaching already has the resources and abilities to come to their own decisions that make sense for them. This probably sounds counterintuitive. It did for me when I first learned it. If someone is coming to me for advice, I'm giving it. If they're facing a problem, I'm going to solve it. As leaders, we don't want people to stumble, fall, or fail, which makes perfect sense, but what it actually protects them from is growth. I'm going to ask you for a moment to think about a recent scenario where someone came to you with any of the circumstances I mentioned earlier. They're facing a challenge, they're stuck, or they need to process a situation. Were you believing they were resourceful and creative enough to come to a decision and move confidently forward? If you were, what was that conversation like? And if you weren't, what was that conversation like? Ultimately, believing this about your team and peers is vitally important because it allows everyone in the relationship to be empowered. It also means you are holding both trust and accountability in the people that you work with. And as we all know, trust is the backbone of all of the relationships in our life. Next, the past can be valuable from a learning lesson perspective, but your focus as a coach is on the present and future behaviors of the coachee. This allows people or teams not to get stuck in the narrative of what they've always done, but what they're going to do moving forward, and what's important about the shifts they're making to achieve their desired results. Imagine how the experience might change if your conversations were about future activity and not the past. It gives tons of space for forward motion and creativity, but it also bolsters self-esteem and creates implicit trust in the relationship. And ultimately, it can be the difference between getting the best out of yourself, your peers, and your team, or seeing the same things being done again and again. Lastly, you and the coachee or coachees are exploring a challenge or opportunity together at the same level, understanding more and deciding on forward motion, rather than you needing to be the teacher with all of the answers and they the student. Do you remember when you were first learning to ride a bike? Your parents probably told you exactly how to do it in the way that a mentor would. So get your feet on the pedals, hands on the bars, look straight ahead and pedal forward. The coaching relationship is different, that it would be akin to two people who are starting a brand new puzzle together, both curious, working through potential to move forward in completing that puzzle. No one person has more answers than the other. What would be possible for you if you approached your conversations in this way when appropriate? Now I'd love to talk through some coaching skills that you can use and bring to your conversations to create more life in them. What's funny about coaching skills is they will likely sound incredibly simple, and yet we often forget about them in the fast-paced nature of our professional worlds. First, let's start with some of the more important coaching skills to bring into a conversation. You don't have to bring all of them all the time, but when you apply these, your impact is to help the person learn more and then decide how to move forward on an action. But the learning more part is incredibly important. It gives everyone in the conversation time to express what matters before an action is decided. A great example I thought of that we can all probably relate to is being in a meeting with a group where there are lots of people moving quickly to get something done and take action. What happens typically is we spend most of our time planning what we're going to do versus understanding what's uniquely important to us as individuals and as a team. Suddenly, the meeting is over. No one had time to process if they agreed, disagreed, or even had other ideas. Next thing you know, issues are arising. Maybe the project isn't moving forward or there are disagreements. And this is often because we were far too focused on the action and not the learning or the why and getting everyone aligned. As I introduce these skills, please be thinking about how you can apply these conversations to diversity initiatives at your company. We'll come back to this topic afterwards. First skill is curiosity. So channeling your inner 5-year-old, you probably remember this. You're always asking why or what for. It's a really easy thing to forget how to do, but allows you to get more information. Next is intuition. It's stating what you sense is under the surface or what's not being said. Imagine using this in a conversation or in a meeting. Third is listening. There are 3 levels of listening that we talk about in coaching. The first is the typical one, which is level 1. We're all engaging in it all the time. Listening to others, deciding selectively what we want to hear, and then just waiting to respond. The second level challenges us to clear our minds, listen to the people who are speaking, understand, and maybe even pause in between them stopping and our response, which displays that we're listening and we're ready to actually respond with something thoughtful. And the third level taps on our intuition a little bit. So the third level of listening is sort of like if you've ever walked into a party and you just had that feeling like it was buzzing or humming, using words like this, allow us to tap into this other level of listening that give us what the energy is in a room or a space. Next is self-management. So really this is about avoiding advice giving and problem solving, leaving your beliefs out of the coaching conversation. Next, and we'll talk about this a bit more, is powerful questions. So asking the what and how questions. Powerful questions should be less than 5 words, and they should get down to the bottom line of what you're trying to understand. And then articulating. So articulate what's going on in the conversation. Show the person that you're listening and that you heard it. Say it back to your coachee in a summarized way that's not completely repeating what they're saying, but again, surmising. And really being their mirror so they can process what they've just said. Next is allowing for silence. So it might feel unnatural, but wait it out, it really works. It allows people to process and makes people actually feel more comfortable to be able to do that in the space with the coach and the coachee. And finally is the request and the challenge. We want to ask for a next step in service of whatever we've learned in this conversation. And this allows us to forward our action and hopefully deepen our learning about what's important. So as I said, even a few of these skills can change the experience and the outcome of a conversation. Now let's take a deeper look at powerful questions and how to ask them, why they're useful in conversations, both in coaching and not coaching. So a powerful question has 3 core elements. The first is, again, genuine curiosity. You're trying to simply figure out what's going on. As mentioned earlier, it also starts only with a what or how. And the reason for this is that these words are both open-ended and non-judgmental. Think about the other words we start questions with, like do or why or where. Do and where often lead to closed-ended questions, which then lead to closed-ended answers. And sometimes why can come off a little bit accusatory, like why did you do that? Lastly, powerful questions cut to the heart of the matter. So the bottom line is if you had 5 seconds to ask this question, what are you asking? Since we know now how to engage in these conversations, let's turn our attention back to diversity in organizations. What amount of time has your organization spent discussing what's important about diversity versus what you're going to do about it? When we think about moving through a cultural shift that's as impactful as a diversity initiative, you'll want to have a sense of how people are actually viewing this change. A great way to gauge that is through something that we call the support continuum. Let's take a look. The first piece of the support continuum is active resistance. And trust me, it gets better after this. So active resistors are people who are not in agreement with what's going on. They may have some sort of reason to stopgap and say, we're just not aligned. But they actually share that openly with people in the team. They give you a reason to be able to have a conversation, understand more, and then get aligned. So it's actually not as bad as it sounds. The passive resistor is someone who is actually not aligned but doesn't share it, right? It's a little bit harder to understand who falls on this line, but the continuum allows you to get this information. Next is the neutral parties. So it doesn't matter to them whether it does or does not happen, but it's equally as important that you know that they're neutral. Fourth is the passive supporters. So our passive supporters are people who completely agree with what we're doing, they're in line with it, but they may not be sharing their agreement with everyone around. They're not telling everybody about it, which there's nothing wrong with, but then we also have our active supporters. And those are people who are actually going out and cheerleading. So when we're thinking about making a big change, we'd love to identify where everybody falls on this spectrum and continuum so we get an understanding of what we need to do to move this forward. Now that we know this, let's take a moment to think about where your hiring managers, your teams, and your peers fall on the support continuum. How could you approach a coaching conversation to move them through the continuum or to understand more about where they are? While aspirational goals around diversity are incredible, they will be difficult to achieve and stick to if everyone isn't aligned to what really matters. They've got to believe in it. So now I want you to do a quick exercise. Jot down what's been valuable so far in this session for you. And if you're taking notes, you can just do an asterisk. And then the names of 3 people in your life professionally who would benefit from conversations like these with you, or where you might benefit from being approached in this way, maybe someone who's managing you or a peer of yours. With each person you write down, what comes to mind when you imagine a conversation when you're bringing some of these skills? What do you think it'll be like? I imagine that it would be more productive, more authentic, more connected, more aligned, and ultimately more valuable. Now let's see a conversation like this in action. Remember, this is an example. It's meant to help you really get clear on how coaching can work. So as you listen, try to capture some of the coaching elements that you hear. Hi, Jill.
Hey, Leah.
What's going on?
Well, as you know, I'm currently sourcing for this program manager role. Our goal on our team is to put forward a really diverse candidate slate. But I'm feeling a ton of pressure from my hiring manager, John, to really just move candidates through quickly.
Got it. Okay. So I'm hearing that you're feeling pressured, and I have heard this from many other people on our team, so you're not alone. Tell me what matters to you in this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn because I would like to be able to put forward the right slate, but I also really want to maintain that great relationship I've established with John.
Yeah, understood. And I admire your commitment to both of those things and also can see how that could clash. So you've talked a lot about diversity as a team, and I'm curious when it comes to diversity for you specifically in your role, tell me what matters about that.
Yeah, well, as you know, I've been recruiting for a few years now, and I've really seen the impact having diversity of thought, diversity of culture, demographic, um, everything that really goes into having an inclusive workplace. I've seen how it can just change the experience within an organization, and that's so important to me.
Yeah, that's the same for me too. It's one of the reasons I'm so committed to this. And it sounds like, diversity in all forms is really a value of yours. Right now, you're just feeling a little bit boxed in and optionless.
Yeah, totally.
Got it.
Nailed it.
All right, so let's imagine this. We know that diversity is a value for you, it's a value for our team, it's a value for our organization. Let's pretend that there's no way that you're going to not present a diverse candidate slate to John. And let's kind of take a different perspective, right? So instead of you being stuck like you're feeling today, what if this were just an opportunity for us to stick to our values?
Yeah, I haven't thought of it like that, but if that were the case, what I would do is I would try some new approaches to finding diverse candidates.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get creative and think of some things. What have you tried so far and what could you do?
What I've tried so far, looking at different colleges, different organizations, I think there's more that I could definitely be doing with maybe my Boolean search strings within LinkedIn Recruiter. Maybe thinking about popular women's names, pronouns like she, her, things like that.
Awesome. I love it. And another idea is maybe we steer away from the traditional companies we tend to hire from.
Okay.
So running a search and then using something like Search Insights to identify what our candidate pool looks like and being able to widen that search.
I love that.
Great. And what else could you do just in the organization itself when you think about initiatives?
Yeah, I've been thinking, and I thought maybe reaching out to some leaders within our employee resource groups and just seeing if they have any referrals.
Awesome, right? So that's an untapped market for us, as you know, and I would love to see that happen.
Okay.
So maybe what you could do is something like a form that allows you to scale this across, multiple ERGs at the company, or you could even host a lunch where you, give something away for people who refer people they know.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like that would make them feel like they're part of the process, and that kind of just makes us build better relationships within the organization.
That's right. That's right. Amazing. So I'm glad you feel better about that. I feel energized. How about you?
I do. I definitely do. But I'm still nervous about my relationship with John.
John, got it. Okay. So let me ask you this. What matters to John in all of this?
Yeah, John is super focused on getting the right skill set, and he is under such a crunch that time to hire is crucial for him.
Got it. Okay. And do you have a sense of where he falls in the support continuum around diversity?
I don't.
Okay. So what if you were to go to him and have a candid conversation about your challenge today? You could even bring the support continuum with you to help you understand.
Okay.
And then share with him what's going on and find out how you all can move forward together.
Yeah, I haven't thought of that, and I'm totally open to doing that.
Amazing. All right. So I'm excited. I think, I've worked with John multiple times over the years, and he's incredibly flexible, and he's, spoken to and communicated in a really great way. So I have faith that this is going to work out and excited for you and supporting you.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think next steps for me, I'm going to move forward, and I think going forward, I'm going to start by setting clear expectations on our diversity hiring initiatives and just having that conversation with John and my other hiring managers.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. So this is just one type of conversation you could have that applies some coaching tactics to your diversity strategy. As you're thinking about this, how can you work some of your coaching skills in with your hiring managers directly? Could you host a workshop to understand how they perceive diversity recruiting? Could you find out what's important to them about it and also what they may or may not know yet? How else might you work these conversations in with your recruiters, your teams? Take a moment to just jot down one idea that comes to your mind based on this role play. And now we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. So we're going to recap what we discussed today. We covered some important topics. First, we talked about how to effectively engage as a coach in coaching relationships and conversations. We looked specifically at the coaching beliefs, skills, and powerful questions. We thought through relationships that would benefit from this approach. And then we applied these concepts to internal discussions around diversity recruitment and retention, looking at the support continuum to identify areas where more understanding and conversation may be needed. And lastly, we wrapped up by seeing some of the coaching skills in action. My final ask for you is to take a look at where you can drive more impact at your organization through coaching conversations. What might this new approach mean for you, your team, and your company?